Now, right here on this session, I'm going to leave you in the very capable hands of a really fantastic panel looking at the future high street. So I'm going to bring on 4 fantastic people. So I'm going to bring on Sean Schneider, who's actually coming from the other side of the Atlantic today. So bringing in a slightly different perspective. And Sean works with malls and retailers to make sure that they are working effectively and driving good, effective footfall and in a collaborative way. So that's great. Hi, Sean. I'm then going to bring on Mr. Graham Salt, who is, I think, the champion of Durham. I think, is that an official term, Graham? It is now, I'm afraid. You're doing some amazing work with Chester the Street in particular. Hi, Graham. And then going to bring on Mr. Roger Smith. Roger, how are you? So Roger heads up an insight agency called Grounded and has got lots of different insights. And then finally, to complete...
Good morning, everyone.
To complete this dream team, I'm going to bring on Claire Bailey, the retail champion. How are you doing today, Claire?
I am good. I've got my video running, I've got my headset on, and all is well.
Super. So I'm going to leave you...
And I apologise in advance for any loud noises that teenagers may make in the background.
That is the new normal, right? That is the new normal for everyone, I think. So I'd probably suggest, I'm going to duck out of here to sort the other one out. I'd suggest you take a couple of minutes just to introduce yourself, Sean. I'll let you take over from here.
Sounds good. Well, thanks, Oliver. And thanks, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everyone, depending on where you are. Like to obviously thank Claire, Graham, and Roger for joining us. And Claire, if you want to maybe do a bit of an intro, and then we'll let Graham and Roger follow.
Okay, well, my name's Claire Bailey. I was dubbed the retail champion by BBC Breakfast some 10 years ago now. Makes me feel very old. I am an author, broadcaster, media guest expert on all matters retail, consumer and high streets, and as is Graham as well, to be fair. And I work with businesses to deliver a mantra that I'm very passionate about. It's to help them develop robust and repeatable processes and systems to become scalable and maybe saleable enterprises. So that's me. I also run conferences and events and other things, wearer of many hats.
Great, well, thank you. Graham?
I'm a retail consultant. I run a people and normally I'm found out and about on high street. So for me, it's quite a unusual time to be stuck in my kitchen rather than out and about helping retailers and places. But I suppose my job normally is to get out there to see what's happening on the ground and to help retailers and places to trade and market themselves more successfully, and to really kind of champion the high street and all the good stuff that is going on out there.
Great. And Roger?
Thank you, Sean. Yes, 30 years man and boy, I think, in retail. So very passionate subject for me. 20 years directly in retail, store ops and central operations, resource planning, space planning, display store formats, a whole host of stuff. 10 years ago, started a research company specifically looking at shopper insights. So we're looking at the behavior of people in store and what their needs, wants, and expectations are, with a mantra of turning insight investment into increased conversion and profit. So still passionate about retail with a slightly different twist these days, but hopefully bringing in some of that experience and the research world to help optimize performance.
Great. Well, thank you, panelists. And I guess before we get into it, if anybody out there on the attendees has any questions, feel free to hit the Q&A button on the bottom, and we'll answer those at the end. And just before we get started into discussing the future high street, I just wanted to share a little fun fact that I did some research on. And if some of you might have already known, but the actual concept of high street or main street dates actually back to medieval times. So we've come a long way since then. but the idea was that towns were actually created alongside main routes in order to provide lodging and also to tap into the possibilities of trade presented by passersby, ultimately becoming the main retail center of a town. So I know that's a little bit of a quick fun fact, but Claire, what do you think of when you hear high street, or how do you define high street today?
Well, it's just another place. I think we have high streets, we have town centres, we have places. It's a definition of a coming together of organisations that deliver an offering to a community. And each and every one is unique in their sort of purpose. Who are they offering it to? Why? What is it that the community wants from them? And I think that when we see things in the media about a plan for a high street and so on and so forth, and I'm sure that both Roger and Graham will agree, I hope they will, we're almost trying to homogenise things. And in reality, the whole purpose of a high street or a town centre or a precinct, a shopping centre and a place is to deliver the experience that the customer that will shop there needs. It might be that there's an optician's, a dentist, a doctor's, a childcare provider, and a convenience store. Or it might be that there's fashion boutiques and high-end luxury and, let's say, places to visit for entertainment. There's a little bit of feedback happening there. But the point is, each and every one of them needs to truly understand the unique footprint and user experience that they are there to deliver, and adapt to ensure that they deliver that consistently, and adapt constantly and consistently to ensure that they remain relevant throughout time.
Great, thanks. And Graham?
Yeah, all good points there from Claire, of course. And it's worth flagging as well, first of all, that the high street and bricks and mortar retail aren't the same thing. As so often we see kind of headlines about Maplin or Toys R Us, and and it's framed in terms of the high street impact. And I think we have to be careful here because issues around retail parks aren't always the same as those on the high street. They do overlap, but I think sometimes we talk about them in a way that is quite confusing, and sometimes does the high street down in a way that it doesn't deserve. After that point, though, I think all that Claire was saying about the high street and homogenization is really important. If you go back in the past, high streets were a lot more diverse in terms of their uses as well. It wasn't all just retail. And certainly in the 80s and 90s, we had this thing about clone towns. All the high streets in big towns look the same as each other. And I think what we're seeing now, one positive consequence of the change that's happening out there is that we're moving away from the clone town. All those big names that you might have found in every place are changing, and the places that are doing really well are the ones that are really tapping into their distinctiveness and their localness and bringing in independents who are doing fantastic things. So I think obviously it's quite scary out there. It was scary out there even before all the current situation. But I think amid all the upheaval of change, there are also some quite positive things we can draw from about making our high streets more interesting and more local.
Great. And Roger, what are your thoughts when you hear
I think all of those points are absolutely right. And I think to sort of summarize it, to end in Graham's point about localization, it's also, we're talking on a big scale about personalization and community. In actual fact, your high street, your local high street is where you get all of that. It's all about personalization, that contact and being part of your local surroundings, your local community. So there's a lot to be said about the importance of the high street in our cities and towns.
Great. So we'll get everybody back on the street shopping very, very soon, but let's transport ourselves in the future. What does the future high street look like to each of you? Claire, maybe you want to start again?
Okay, so obviously, as of last week, I was supposed to be running an event called the Future High Street Summit for business improvement districts, local authorities, place managers, and so on. And we cancelled because of the nature of what's going on. So in terms of what the future of the high street looks like, well, I once had a historical architect speaking at one of my events, and he shared, there's some feedback. Okay, he shared some images of the high street over the years. And as we rightly point out, high streets have got heritage. They have been around for hundreds of years. What people do there is bordering on the same as they always did. They socialize, they access community services, they access products, and they meet each other. What those products, services are within our high streets has varied over the last couple of 100 years. But in reality, the high street is still the high street. It is the place that people congregate to access stuff that they need. So in terms of what the future looks like, I think that we are, and especially now, we've been forced into a very rapid digital transformation. I think that we need a high street that provides and services the needs of the community. So place managers, whether that be local authority, business improvement district, or otherwise, need to really connect and bring in experts to understand, who are we serving? What do they want? What are the critical convenient services that the people that come to this place need? Or are we a tourist destination? Looking at perhaps the Institute of Place Management and their town centre profiling and town centre personalities, tapping into all manner of information that explains the movement of people, the time of day, the days of the weeks, and so on. I mean, we have video technology, we have Wi-Fi technology that gives us insight into the movement of people around places. And also then encouraging people to perhaps move differently using solutions around wayfinding. So the future of our high street will be very technologically, if I can say it, enabled, but it will still be a physical, social, and community delivery of experiences and services, whether that be for the supply of products or interactions like a hairdresser, and it needs to be relevant. So I think that we can't define one single essence of the future high street other than relevant, appropriate, and constantly evolving.
Great, thanks, Claire. And Graham, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. Again, all really good points there. And I think certainly in my experience, places that are doing well are ones that are indeed seizing the power of online and using that as a way of building awareness of what they offer and driving footfall. The internet can be a threat to bricks and mortar retail, but also it can be a fantastic tool for getting messages out there that you wouldn't otherwise be able to do so. And we've seen that in the last week or two, how important Facebook has been in connecting small retailers with their audiences and arranging all kinds of new forms of delivery and different ways of working together. But as well as, I think, embracing tech, something that I like to do is to look backwards as well. And those of you who follow me on Twitter will know that I do quite a lot of retail history stuff. I like to look at how places have been in the past, and particularly if you know my Twitter, I quite often look at what former Woolworth stores have become, because I think if we look at a retailer like that had a footprint in hundreds of towns all over the country, and you see what those stores have become now, it's one way of looking at how high streets have always evolved.
I have to say, Graham, I always reference the Woolies 10 report when I speak.
Thank you, Claire.
Because it's brilliant. And it just goes to show that there isn't a crisis, there's an evolution.
Yeah, exactly. I think things are evolving now at a faster pace than maybe in the past. But if we look back, we can understand how places have changed. And some of the things that I think high streets need to embrace now are about going back to how they would have been in the past. So, all those qualities I mentioned about being more distinctive, being more independent, being more mixed use. If you look at Newcastle, it's a city now that it's predominantly retail, but in the past you'd have had people living around the shops. There was industry, there all kinds of different uses all mixed together. And I think certainly in lots of towns we're seeing a big growth in mixed uses, partly to make use of vacant retail space, but also because we know that from the work of IPM and other institutions that actually town centres that work well are the ones that bring together lots of uses and lots of activity all through the day and not just in retail trading hours.
Great. And Roger?
Yeah, so I think that from the experience that I've had so far in terms of looking at sort of local authorities, bids and retailers, there's an awful long way that these groups can go towards working better together, to listening to each other and understanding their needs and being more collaborative. It seems sometimes like it's a sort of a top-down approach. You know, we've brought in this many more visitors and so on and so forth, but sometimes that doesn't necessarily translate to some of the retailers' needs. Or putting on events is maybe a great thing for a town centre, but is it really in tune with what the retailers can do with that? So there's lots of examples up and down the country of that. There's lots of great examples of some places doing it well. So sharing best practice is a really key thing. I think there's also a point that we've got a lot of independent retailers that aren't blessed like the chains and national guys with understanding retail marketing and how to optimize window displays and so on and so forth. And I think that that's obviously a great opportunity for some of those guys to get involved with a new way of thinking, rather than just sort of taking the point of view of, I've been here doing this for a lot of time and I can continue doing the same, because they can't. It's the world is changing. We're moving more online, and I think the opportunity to be involved in a number of digital platforms is absolutely fantastic, and they do need to embrace that. Little plug here, but Ian Shepherd has written a wonderful book about reinventing retail. Anybody that's listening today or watching today really should take a view on and take to read of it.
Seriously, where's my book? That's just not nice.
That's a given, isn't it, Claire? So.
Well, rather you just segued into that question, actually. So much similar to a shopping center or a mall, where the collaboration between the landlords and tenants are critical to their success. Who are the players that you feel need to be involved in the success of future high street? Claire, who do you feel are the players now involved, or should be involved?
It depends. It depends on the nature of the place. I mean, if you look at Marylebone High Street in London, it's part of the Walden Estates, and they have some kind of overarching agreement around who would be able to occupy that space. Very similar to a shopping centre. Your average high street's got so many disparate stakeholders, landlords, and so on, that make it very difficult to curate the customer experience. And actually what we do need is proper professional place management to sit above, in an overarching manner, all of those retailers' presence, and actually say no to some and yes to others, and actually proactively pitch out to others to say, we have a place that has this kind of footfall, this is the demographic, and they would like to buy your product. So we need to create curated experiences, not just within retail, but beyond retail. And it's not just about retail. It's hospitality, leisure, businesses. People have a shop front that they are consumer facing, but they might be an estate agent, a lawyer, a tax advisor, and so on. And this makes up the Mix the High Street, which ties in perfectly to what Graham did with the Woolies 10 work, saying that, a number of those Woolworths stores, was it 804 closed within 40 days? I think I might, maybe not quite got the numbers right. I've studied it deeply, Graham. And a lot became just another version of Woolworths, but many others were galleries, childcare centres, divided units, tax advisors, and so on and so forth. So what is it that the community needs that space to deliver? And I think that's the difficulty, that we cannot come up with a one-size-fits-all approach. We must work with the organisations like business improvement districts and our local authorities to, and they may need to bring in expertise to analyse and understand the nature of the footfall. What do they do in that place? What is it that they need? Do they need a sandwich at lunchtime? Do they need a haircut? Or do they want to do an evening convenience shop to take dinner home for the kids? And it's all of that that goes into understanding what will be a successful business in a place. And I think that we've got a few shining examples. I mean, obviously, Marylebone High Street, Howard Walden, overarching management. Derby Cathedral Quarter, for instance, managed by a good friend of mine, Ian, and they have created the essence of a cathedral quarter. They've devised an experience, and they've helped all of the retailers, large and small, deliver shopfront improvement schemes, created a consistent and cohesive experience, and they've proactively pitched out to retailers to say, we have customers that would buy your stuff. They are very proud to have a Dr. Martens store within that street. And that's because they targeted them, knowing what they knew about the nature of the consumer that occupied that space. And then it sort of turns it on its head. Instead of retailers finding space, people who have got spaces within their remit are targeting retailers with all the evidence and information to say, you will thrive here. And I think that is a new way of working, and hopefully a paradigm shift that we can see from now on in.
Great. And Graham, who do you feel are the players moving forward to make High Street a success?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a big fan of place leadership. In some places it might well be a bid, and there are lots of bids or business improvement districts that are doing great work up here in the northeast. Stockton bid, for example, Newcastle bid are doing great work at providing that kind of focal point and bringing together all kinds of stakeholders within those places. And that theme of partnership working is something that is really important in whatever context you find it. So I've been involved in the High Streets Task Force pilot in the last few weeks, and it's not giving much away to say that in many cases, one of the big themes that's been coming out, is the importance of partnership working, and even bringing key actors from the local authority and business and education and everything else, into that one room for the task force event has been a big deal in some cases. It's brought together people who might not have had that chance to meet each other and have conversations before. And certainly my experience of looking at different towns around the country is that the places that are working together, that are pushing forward in the same direction, are the ones that are doing well. And certainly in Chesterley Street, where I do quite a lot of work, quite a big part of that project has been bringing together organisations like landlords, the retailers, the council, the business association, all these people who perhaps in the past haven't been as connected as you might expect them to be. And it's got me there as a kind of hub almost that can help connect people, because it's so important if a retailer is looking at a town like Chesterley Street and thinking, I'd quite like to trade there. And sometimes they don't always know who to contact or what's available or how to go about making that connection. And so I think having all these networks in place can be a really powerful way of both making a town function more successfully, but also about promoting it online and making sure that everyone is really kind of working together in a way that can help these places to succeed. Sorry
for the photo bomb by a cat.
Yeah, great.
Cats like to type, apparently.
And Roger, who are your thoughts on the players involved in the future of High Street?
I think Claire and Graham have got it really well covered there. I think my only thoughts around this conversation is probably coming back to sort of part of what we touched on before, where the retailers surviving are those that get in tune with the needs of shoppers and think about how they're in touch with their customers using social media, being part of their community, and it's to a degree it's back to basics in terms of reaching out to people. Many years ago it would be a half-page spread in your local newspaper. Well, it's the same but different. You just got to carry on working hard at it. The minute that you sit still and think that you've got it all covered is the minute that you're going backwards. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done to support some of these people in getting them up to speed with kind of a more modern way of doing things. But they've got to be willing to learn as well. They've got to be willing. I'm focusing more that train of thought around independence than I am around nationals necessarily. But even some of the big guys, it's kind of, we've always done it this way, so we don't need to learn anymore. It's just not acceptable anymore.
Great. Well, thank you for that. So we all know that retailers, wherever they're located, are going to open and close, whether right or wrong. But what do you all feel that the high street retailers of tomorrow need to do to the best of their opportunities to be fruitful and viable? Claire?
What do they need to do? They need to be good retailers. They need to know the customer. They need to have the right products and the right price at the right place with the right promotions and the right presentation. Nothing's changed. That's the same story for hundreds of years. But how do they know what right looks like? And also, my issue is independents actually do truly deeply understand who they're selling to, because they're probably part of that community and they probably know all their customers in a social way. It's the chains that I worry for. They're so strict around corporate marketing. I really believe we need to relax all of the constraints on chain retailers and let them have some control around hyperlocal, because global is the sum of local. If you want to be a good global retailer, you need to be very good locally. And within that, what I think they need to do is really actually now get to what we've been talking about for, and Roger will back me up on this, what, 20, 30 years? Local ranging, local layouts, local space plans, and actually stop the products that sell in a community. Have the marketing materials that work for a community. So it's the chain stores for me that really worry me, that they aren't empowered to be as they need to be part of a community. For instance, a local manager might not get paid overtime or extra hours to go to a meeting for the local business improvement district. And yet, somewhere in another office, marketing is sending them marketing materials, but finance are paying a bid levy, and property might be paying a bid levy. Who knows? But marketing and the finance team or the property team don't get together, and nobody talks to the person on the ground who is part of a bid. And I actually think there is a massive opportunity, and I have spoken about this to Helen Dickinson at the BRC, massive opportunity to connect levy-paying retailers and their marketing teams and the store managers within a bid environment to empower and enable them to be part of something. And to me, it's that connectivity. So it's making sure that you are relevant in the place where you occupy space, not just having one whitewash corporate marketing exercise, but having an adaptation, 80% corporate, 20% local, to enable them to be relevant in the community where they operate. That would be my suggestion.
Great insight, Claire. And Graham, your thoughts?
Yeah, it's about being a great retailer, as Claire says, and about offering the customer all the things they want in an effective way at the right price, at the right time, in the right place. And I think, as Claire has suggested, independents are often very good at that. I think if you look at what independents have been communicating over the last few days, many of them have really got it right in terms of how they've been communicating with their customers, all the things they've been saying, the way they've been talking about their businesses. It's been quite poignant, quite uplifting, all kinds of emotions in the things that independents have been communicating. And sometimes I think the big retailers haven't got that same personality, the same soul that the independents might have. But if you look at big name retailers who have been doing quite well lately, someone like Waterstones has recovered its position partly off the back of devolving things more locally. So if you look at Waterstones now, the stores are more local. Each store has its own Twitter account, and that kind of thing is something I'd like to see more of, because it clearly is futile to try and offer the same thing across tens or hundreds of stores. It just doesn't work, and that's why I often argue that independents actually, although it's hard out there for independents, I think independents are often the best place to find their way through all the challenges that are happening, because they can be nippy, they can be flexible, they do understand their customers in a way that maybe the big names don't always.
Great. And Roger, how do you feel that the high street retailers of tomorrow can win?
I think there's a number of different things. I think Claire picked on upon some of them in terms of being sort of personable, local community. I've kind of made notes around all of those sorts of things. I think the other one for me is about being present. I came across this morning. I don't know if you can see that properly. This is Sophology in digital media, talking about building your sofa fort. They're not trying to sell you anything. It's a lovely piece of PR around, we're stuck at home, go and have some blooming fun. and it drew me to the brand. You know, I don't have a particular feeling for Sophology, but I thought, well done you. It was absolutely fantastic. So that's a great way of kind of, connecting with people. And then I thought, so the other element is, we talked about retail marketing and bits and pieces, but then I thought about systems. Systems, we have too many organizations, particularly the larger ones, putting systems in place because they're systems orientated. And a lot of those systems, computer-based or otherwise, tend to actually interfere with the shopping process in terms of put more steps in place or just make things more difficult for us to shop. And people really need to look hard and fast about what they're doing, because the minute that they're putting these barriers in place, they're just creating friction and it's just turning us off. So there's vast opportunities for a lot of organizations to be looking at themselves in that way. And I think the last thing for me is that really wonderful, important part, and the Busbys was just talking about it, the emotional connection that retail can build is just fantastic, and we can't underestimate that. A welcome smile, personal greeting from somebody that wants us genuinely to enjoy the experience of being in their outlet and experiencing their products and taking them home immediately if needs be. And I've always related from my early years for retail to be like, if you want to invite some friends around for dinner, you're going to go to the trouble of inviting them through your front door, make the most amazing meal that they could have ever had, but don't make them feel warm and welcome, then you may as well have shut the door in the first place. So let's have a think about, what we're doing with our colleagues. Let's employ, colleagues that have an affinity to want to be in these places and to make these experiences wonderful and welcoming, and the management teams are supporting colleagues in that fashion and maybe rewarded around getting that sort of quality feedback, not just in an immediate sale but in the overall experience and that brand building in that sense. And I think that's really one of the most important opportunities that retail has, is to build that emotional connection.
Great, thanks, Roger. So we're going to be heading into our last question. Again, if anybody has any questions for the panel, feel free to put them in. We'll answer them after this last question. And I guess just on an ending note, we all know that High Street's been around since medieval times, not going anywhere anytime soon. But for the panel, just given the state of retail right now, given it's a turbulent time, what are some quick wins that High Street could implement once retail gets back into action today to start driving more footfall and sales?
Am I going first? In the
Sure,
alphabetical order theme?
Yes.
Okay, so there's a speaker coming up that I urge everyone to listen to. It's Polly Barnfield from Maybe, and I believe that what she will say will answer what I'm about to say. You've got to stay connected. You've got to be authentic, human, and honest. Don't start promoting yourself. Talk about what you're going through. Be real. And use social media. Use all channels. Use images on Instagram, tweets, LinkedIn, Facebook, the lot. Stay connected. Because one day, when we're all back allowed out again, you will be the front of mind of your ideal customer. And you don't need thousands of customers. You don't need to connect to everybody. You just need to connect to who is right for you. And they will spend with you and they will have that emotional connection that Jana talked about and that Roger talks about. They will feel for your business and they will want to spend their hard-earned cash with you. So just stay in communication. Use social and digital channels. If you have a product that people need right now, make sure you're available online. Make sure you've got a good e-commerce, an Amazon marketplace, an eBay channel, and any other marketplace that's available. Just be present, to link to what Roger just said, and keep in communication. But most of all, do not attempt to promote, just attempt to be there. Offer yourself as an available. You're obviously a business, so you can't expect to give away charity, but you can't really be seen to be promoting right now. I've had a lot of emails from companies who are promoting to me right now, and I'm thinking that's the last thing I need to worry about. I'm putting an employee on the job retention scheme. I'm looking at the government for small business rates relief grants, and the last thing I need to be worrying about is if a particular fashion retailer is giving me a 20% discount. It seems crass. I'm just thinking that right here, right now, the best way to connect with your future customer is to be a human being and share in their fears and share in their hopes. And that would be my advice.
Great. Thanks, Claire. And Graham, over to you.
Yeah, it's a really important point from Claire, and it's been quite interesting how over the last week or so things have been evolving every day. And I think even a week ago it was okay to be selling stuff, and then over the last few days I think there's been a strong sense that any kind of business as usual isn't really appropriate in the current climate, and people have been quite resistant to any kind of sales messaging, and rightly so, I think. But it's been nice to see some of the retailers who I work with in Chesterley Street posting on Facebook still, sharing what it's like for them, as Claire was saying. I work with a coffee shop in Chesterley Street, and of course it's currently closed and they can't post any pictures of their food, but they've been engaging all their followers by posting pictures of what they're cooking at home instead. So, fun things like that just convey how these small traders are human, how they're going through all kinds of struggles and uncertainties and upset right now. And I think it's by maintaining that dialogue and that messaging and sharing some bits of fun as well that will help all these people get through and help all the customers as well to get through. And once it's all over, I think you will be quite keen to go back and support these businesses that you've had that relationship with over the weeks to come, and you'll want to go back and support them and help them get back on their feet.
Great. And last but not least, Roger, what do you think some retailers can do as quick wins once sales get going again?
I think, Sean, completely agreeing with the other guys, but building on that, once people are in the high street, a simple one is get your windows right. Let's make them impactful. Let's make them engaging. Let's make the message clear. Let's create real intrigue that's going to get people wanting to come into your store. It's a free piece of advertising, arguably, and windows are highly underrated in terms of part of the marketing mix. And I can cite many examples of really poor performance, but also good practice. But the windows are a vast opportunity for people to drive footfall into their stores. Great.
Well, actually, Gary from the audience had a great comment. And same thing, Gary, I got a bunch of flyers at my door the other day, and a bunch of those stores were closed. And I know it takes some production time to get in there, but you're 100% right that things definitely change, and it's not the same old flyers anymore. So we have, and Claire, we'll start with you. So Stephen asked a question just with supermarkets being the focal point on some of the streets. What's your view with regards to them hitting 20%? If they hit 20% of their sales online, what would that have an impact on the high street?
Well, actually, if you look at the current ONS data, the online sales performance of all retail, obviously it's not necessarily broken down to supermarkets versus others, tracks at just under 20% already. Forecasters are saying that as a result of the crisis that we're seeing now, online sales may increase to 30%. But my view is that how on earth do you measure online versus offline sales? I mean, if I go into a shop, for example, and I look at a product and I think about it, I might try something on or touch and feel it and experience it, but then I might get some advice and I might go home and think about it a bit more and I might transact online. Who made the sale? I don't think we can talk. I've been saying this for years, actually. We cannot talk about online and offline anymore. It is simply retail. The store provides a customer experience and interaction, a sales environment, and it is a showroom and potentially a fulfillment center. Digital provides us, I mean, who needs tills anymore? I worked with the Amazon home of Black Friday for the last 3 years, where you scan a smile code, which is basically a QR code with the little Amazon logo in it, and it'll be there for you to collect in an hour. It's inviting. I don't understand why physical retailers, especially those with deeper pockets, aren't doing more to create a much more immersive, seamless online-offline experience where you don't actually really care. You go in, you experience the product, you press something on your phone, it's bought, it's either delivered or you collect it or you take it away now. What is this online-offline? We shouldn't be talking about that anymore. It's simply retail. And we have channels to market that allow us to reach customers and sell product. And that's all that matters. That would be my take.
Great, thanks. And to echo your point, and I'll do a little bit of plug for Steve Dennis, who'll be on later. I know he calls it harmonized retail, and that might cost me a little bit of money to him as his licensing fee for that. Graham, question.
Hey, do I get paid?
both of you.
Thank you. I'll send you a bill.
Thank you. Graham, over to you. So Edward asked, isn't the future of high street much more mixed use? Retail meets restaurants and cafes meets office buildings. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's very true that I think in most cases, towns and high streets have too much retail space at the moment. And in many cases, the number of multiple retailers who might take vacant spaces is very few indeed. So it's now at the point where, unless these spaces can be taken by independents who are growing, more and more retail space is going to have to be repurposed one way or another. And it's important that it's done right, though, because I think if you nibble away at a high street and take chunks out in the middle of it, it starts to eat away at that kind of place, as a destination, as a place to explore, as a place to navigate. So it's really important that in repurposing space, we're quite careful about how we do it. So it might well be bits of former retail around the edges. It's making use of the upper floors. It's really turning our town centres, into more like the places we see if we go over to the continent. All these towns and cities in France and Germany and elsewhere, where you really get a lot of mix of uses, of people living in the town centres, of restaurants and bars and all kinds of different things, workplaces as well. So it's definitely the way things are going. It can be hard to make it happen, but I think the way that we're seeing department stores disappearing, all kinds of things like that, it's the only way forward. And in the years to come, it's going to be happening more and more for sure.
Great, thanks. And Roger, just one last question. Just Pat's last question here. Roger, what's a brand hero, retail brand hero that you think's got it right?
Goodness me. I'd like to think perhaps Timberland doing a great job, particularly with their new store concept. Built around experiential and community. Again, if you look at something like Adidas with their newest invention, it's built around so many different themes around sustainability, personalization, and the whole of the experience. You can't just don't just go and try some trainers on for size. Check them for actually the fit when you're running in them and stuff like this. So yeah. There's a lot of people, even big boys and girls, that are really getting it right and pushing forward, and including some of those digital experiences in store as well. So there's a lot of good things going on.
Great. Well, thank you, panel. I know we're running a little bit behind, but a lot of great, lively conversations. And over to you, Oliver.
Yeah, well, it certainly sounded like it. I was ducking in and out, and I thought there was one comment that really stood out to me, and I think it was Roger, you made it. Same but different. Isn't that good, eh? So I think it's really looking at a lot of change, but similar to what we were talking about this morning in this morning's panel, actually, all very much themed around the same sort of themes. So yeah, I look forward to catching this one on the replay because, I was sorry I couldn't stay for the whole session. But thank you so much to all four of you, to Sean and to Graham, to Roger and to Claire, of course. We're moving now into the virtual booth. So this session is going to be shut down. I've put the links to those virtual booths. I'm going to just pop them in the chat again for you if you want to head over there. We've got Ring Central looking at how you can work from home and sort of doing a bit of a demo as to how you can actually get that all really working well. We've got the Maybe team with the shout out from Claire to Polly Barnesfield. So Polly is CEO.
Totally go for them.
And they are looking at how you can really understand what your customers are saying. And it's so quick. Go over there, tell them what your brand is, and they will tell you. It's like, and then the guys from Bold 360 are in the networking area, and they've got their should we call it an anti-COVID widget to help support your customers in these strange times. So do head over there, go and have a look at them, and then remember, of course, you know how this works now. Share your feedback, your takeaways. Give a little wave to the cat.
Yeah,
I've had the cat trending on Twitter.
Bring the cat back in.
I know. Big fan.
There she was, momentarily. Homeworking.
So, yeah, absolutely. So thanks very much, guys, and
thank you, Oliver.
Joining you
Thank
in the afternoon sessions.
Take care. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.